What's going on, guys? In today's video, I wanted to go through my top 10 character wish lists I hope we see in 2024 or at some point early into 2025, but ideally it'd be really cool if we saw a lot of these characters show up this year. So let's go ahead and go dive into it. All right, guys, I mentioned this one in a couple of videos that I was going to do a top 10 list. I kind of put this together the other day. I just haven't had a chance to post it because I decided to do a raid content, and I kind of did like an update on some information we got, which, surprise, still waiting to get some further update information, but as soon as I get anything, it'll definitely be here on the channel. So if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, I recommend doing so. Anytime we have any type of patch notes or breaking news, I have all my Discord channels set up to give me the immediate alert, and I will 100% make sure I go ahead and post those to the channel to give you guys the latest and greatest information, since the information does not exist in the game currently. So the only way you can get this information is either by joining the official Discord and having your notifications turned on, which can be super annoying to be getting buzzed all day, or going to the website. I cannot guarantee that any or all of the social media is going to have the patch notes, because I don't believe they've currently posted patch notes on like their Twitter account or their Instagram account. Generally, it's just like a picture of like a marquee character being released. So anyways, on this video, I thought I'd do the top 10, and I had a little fun with it. I don't know if you guys ever use like the AI and like Midjourney and Leonardo and all that, but I thought it'd be kind of fun. A lot of these are like slight modifications to existing images that exist online, so there's nothing too fancy with them. Some of them are a little bit more like, hey, you know, Leonardo, go ahead and do your thing, see what you can create. But I thought it'd be fun to make the characters look a little bit more cartoony and characteristic, that we might actually see a resemblance of in game instead of like the actual characters, the actual actors from Lord of the Rings, trilogy that came out 20 or so years ago now. So the first one up is going to be the Fellowship. So we know right now in the game we have 3 of the Fellowship characters, and I'd like to see that rounded out with 2 additional characters. I think obviously the one that we would most certainly see added to the game at some point is going to be Aragorn. So we have Strider, but Strider's not really the Aragorn, like the legendary, the, Fellowship version. He's kind of more like that Road to Rivendell Strider. So it'd be cool to see an Aragorn added to the game. When I grew up as a kid, like Aragorn was kind of like one of my favorite characters. I really liked Legolas, but my cousin and I, like, we always battled, like, we're talking when I was like 10 years old, right? Or so. So like anytime we play like action figures or something like that, like we always want to be like the opposites of each other. Like we didn't want to have the same character. And so like, as kids, like I was the Green Power Ranger fan because he was the red, or, just like stuff like that, right? Like for wrestling, like I liked Undertaker and he liked Kane, like just stupid stuff. But anyways, I was the Aragorn fan. He was the Legolas fan. So nostalgic for me as a kid growing up watching Aragorn and kind of watching that trilogy as a young kid going to the movie theaters and such. Be cool to see him added to the game. And then kind of the 5th one to round him off, like I really think we should see a Frodo added to the game, like a Frodo Fellowship, not the Frodo that we have, that's the Rivendell, but like a Fellowship version, right? Like we know CG will create multiple versions of characters, at least they have in Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes, where there are multiple versions of a same character. So I don't expect that not to happen in this game. We have Gandalf the Grey. We'd probably eventually see Gandalf the White. So there's certainly ways that they could add a variant without it being like a Strider and then a different named Aragorn, right? We could see like Frodo the something. So I think that'd be kind of fun, something like that to happen in the game. And these aren't in any particular order per se. They're just kind of like 10 characters that I think be pretty cool added to the game. So the next one I have up is actually King Theoden, right? So King Theoden, I think he'd be an awesome addition to the Rohan team. So we currently have 5 on Rohan, but nobody really uses Eldred or Wilfwyn. You kind of have the Rohan 3, and then they sort of just supplement a lot of different teams. So I don't know if Wilfwyn or Eldred would eventually fall in and create a full Rohan 5 if somehow he had like a leadership ability that wanted the Rohan to be a full squad, sort of like, like Elrond and the elves and such. I don't know if he would fall into a bucket like that, and then moving one of those 2 into the team that would kind of be like a worthy farm, or if like a 5th Rohan character is added to the game, that would just make sense to then have like a roundabout 5, so you're not like just kind of like always considering those 3 as like the Rohan 3 and not really ever caring about the other 2. So obviously King Theoden, he was the king of Rohan with the War of Rohirrim. I don't know how to say that, or I do, but I can't say it. I think with that movie coming out this year, he would be a cool like late like fall kind of add to the game, like possibly even a legendary, right? Like that would fall in line with potentially like a 4th legendary add to the game if we see one again, maybe like some point in the early half of this year as like the third legendary added to the game, and then him as like the fourth at like the later half of the year. So I think he'd be like a really cool one to add to the game. And we know Lady Eowyn has like one of the worst leadership abilities, so I really hope if they do add another Rohan character, and specifically King Theoden, that they would add him with a leadership ability that is much better than Eowyn's, just to give them like something that's a little bit more supplement than the current only one they really have on their roster. The next one we have is Treebeard, Fangorn, whatever you want to call them, right? So they were like a really cool kind of character design, like again, referencing the movies. I think it was in what, the second one, The Two Towers, we saw a lot of them kind of showing up. And again, you can see with like the artwork, like it's pretty cool, right? Like this is something like you could generally see possibly in the game, taking what exists as like the movie versions and then kind of creating them into like this sort of like art style. And I kind of referenced when I was doing this, I didn't spend a lot of time in the AI side of it, but I was like kind of like World of Warcrafty. I probably could have just straight up said reference current art design from Lord of the Rings Heroes of Middle Earth, or you know, whatever, right, to even get like a better, closer design to it. But I did this like late last night, a couple nights ago, so I didn't really spend a lot of time like tinkering with kind of how the art design came out. I just thought it'd be fun to look at it outside of the generic, like just a picture from the web, like the internet, right? But Treebeard, again, I think he'd be like a large character. We don't have a light, large side character, so he'd be like an easy fill. I just don't know how the Ents would end up, because Ents would be a cool team concept as like another faction, but you can't have a small tree, right? Like I don't know how they would add potentially non-trees to the Ents, or some way to supplement that team to have a full squad if they ever decided to go that route. But we obviously know like this big tree would clearly be a large character and would certainly be okay as a standalone. So I don't know how they would do that, but I think adding Treebeard into the game would be super cool. So he's another one on my list. The next one we have is Isildur, right? So again, this is a really cool character. He's kind of in the opening scene, cutting off Sauron's hand, taking the ring, and he's sort of the whole reason why Lord of the Rings kind of happened, right? Like he could have thrown the ring into the fire and that would have been it. Instead, the power came to him. He decided like, nope, not getting rid of this ring, kept it. And then Lord of the Rings became, you know, what it is, right? And so I think he has like a cool kind of good bad side to him that would be interesting to see him added to the game. Like you could maybe even have again a version of him on both sides as kind of the good and the bad, right? So Isildur would be kind of a cool one, I think, added to the game. The next one we have, this one's a little bit, the artwork is probably like one of the more weird ones of the bunch, but Lady Galadriel, right? Again, she's another one kind of like Isildur, where like she kind of has like that light and dark potential, because you know she's sort of like borderline on the ring and the power and kind of wanting it, but she's another one that could be like a great addition to the game as like another legendary, right? Like she is probably the most powerful female elf of the bunch. She's like Lord Elrond worthy when it comes to the elves and their powers and whatnot. I don't think we need her anytime soon. She's one I'd even say like 2025, because we already have a lot of elves and a lot of dwarves. So I don't think we need more elves and dwarves per se from the faction side of things. We can probably push these a little bit down the bucket list, but she does strike me as somebody who'd be a really, really cool like legendary, or just needs to be a very strong elf, because not that they need more strong elves, they're probably the strongest faction. But again, she's a notable character, comes to mind when I'm thinking about Lord of the Rings and the movies that I've watched. I read the books a long time ago, so there's certainly a bajillion characters that are probably throughout all of J.R.R. Tolkien's storytelling, but it's been so long, I don't remember all the, you know, like the mini details. But the movies I've watched, God, I can't even tell you how many times over the course of the since its release, and then the Hobbit trilogy. So they just, those characters are a little bit more top of mind when I'm trying to think about characters for this game. But let me know in the comments below, like if there are characters from the books that would be awesome additions, or even factions that like could potentially exist in the game that you would like to see in the game. Like that'd be super, super cool. And speaking of which, if you guys like the content I'm putting out, we're getting real close to 700 subs, and I'd really appreciate if you guys find this helpful. If you're interested in getting daily uploaded videos to my channel, to subscribe to the channel, because I'm trying to, you know, kind of start the year off strong, staying consistent to that daily posting and trying to get to 1,000 subscribers as quickly as possible. Since I started posting not even 3 weeks ago, I've already had over 200 new subscribers to the channel. I had some back end subscribers, which, you know, we're kind of gaining some, losing some on a day-to-day basis, because a lot of them are Hearthstone folks that kind of followed me and subscribed to my channel for Hearthstone content before I stopped creating that content a few years ago. So as my channel is kind of coming back to life and maybe showing up on some people's, you know, subscription kind of channel on their YouTube, they're like, what the hell is this? I'm not interested in Lord of the Rings. And they're probably, you know, unsubscribing. That's totally fine. Like, don't expect you to hang along if you're not here from the Hearthstone side and not interested in Lord of the Rings at all. But if you are interested in this type of content, a lot of you guys haven't subscribed, so I appreciate it if you did. So anyways, let's get back to it. So the next character we have are the wargs, right? So Uders was added as the standalone warg. He's kind of a part of the goblin squad, which was like a cool way to add another character in order to go after the goblins. If you didn't have like the great goblin, there was just like that additional character you could go to then get Thorin. But the wargs as a whole is like a cool concept, and it's a very easy sort of concept where you can just sort of create like a bunch of wolves, essentially, right? A bunch of wargs. And they don't really have to have a whole lot of like true to the story background. Like, they can just be like really cool, really powerful, a large wolf potentially, right? Like, it's a large side one, sort of like how you have the goblins, you have the great goblin. You could have something similar to that. So it'd be cool to see the wargs built out as a squad and not like a standalone. And I'd imagine that's something they already have in the works and their plans. But I love wolves. I actually have one tattoo, and it's like a half sleeve with a wolf and some other stuff going on. And so for me, like, the wargs kind of resemble like wolves. The wargs resemble wolves. So adding something like that'd be really cool. The next one I have, and I'm really surprised he's already like in the game with the Isengard, but this is Lurtz, right? So we all remember kind of like the key scene as you have sort of that Isengard Uruk-hai being developed. He's kind of like the one that's always like the face of them, working closely with Saruman and such. And then as you get to the end of the movie, he's actually the one that ends up taking down Boromir, right? So he is a big time character to the story, at least to the movie side of it, and would be a character that'd be pretty cool that is added into the game, right? We already have the 5 Isengard, so I don't know necessarily like where he'd slide in, because then he's just a random 6. But I'd imagine as the game develops, we're probably going to see upwards of, you know, potentially 10 different characters within each of these factions. So I don't think Isengard, because they have 5, can't get another character. Like, we already seen the elves with more than 5. We've already seen the dwarves with more than 5. So it's certainly like not out of the realm of possibilities to see a lot of characters continuously be added into existing factions that already have 5 or more, right? So he'd be a cool one, I think, added to the game. The next one we have is Golem Smeagol, your choice. I mean, he is just like an icon to the movies, right? He's like, it was such an awesome like character design back in the day, like from like what's the word I'm looking for? Like animation, I guess. Like, remember this movie when it came out, The Fellowship was like 2001. So not that that's like, it feels like it's not that long ago, but it was 23 years ago now. So when you watch some older movies, you're, you know, even as somebody who doesn't really think of the early 2000s as that long ago, I think like they did a fantastic job in the movies, like really setting precedent of like the animations and the CG and etc. that, you know, you can really go after. And everybody knows Golem Smeagol is like kind of double side. You're probably going to see both sides of him in the game at some point, Smeagol and Golem. You could even see him from like a good and a bad side at some point. Like, there's multiple ways to incorporate this character, and from what I've heard, like, he already kind of does exist in the game in some kind of back end files. So yeah, it'd be cool. I think King Theoden as well actually exists in some sort of fashion within the game in the back end files, but I think he'd be a cool character at some point to be added to the game. All right, 2 left. So spiders. I watched Swag's video, and I thought it was interesting when he had called out spiders and potentially like a faction. I don't know necessarily if I'd see the spiders as a whole as a faction. It's certainly possible if there's enough of them that makes sense to create a team of spiders per se. I mean, we have wargs, so why couldn't we have spiders, right? Totally possible. But I do think that Shelob, I don't know how to say it, I forget, but she is, or he or she, again, he, she, Shelob, the spider, was another big scene in the movie when I think it was Frodo and Sam had to take her down, right? And so I think that's like a notable character that a lot of people might remember, and being added to the game would be pretty cool. And again, I think, and I said this in like another video of mine, I think this would be a cool concept as like a guild boss, like a clan boss of some sorts, like where you just fight this spider, Shelob, whatever, as a and you guys can tell me in the comments below like how you say it, so I'm not going to stress about it, but would be a really cool one added to the game as like a boss battle, right? Like some way to add similar style as like the raids we have, but without it being like full chapters and a whole kind of craziness, like just straight up once a week, couple times a week, could be even every day, you fight this boss and you get X amount of rewards depending on the difficulty you did it on and how much damage you put in. And because generally speaking spiders do like poison damage, like that poison could just be like a ticking time bomb that would constantly keep hurting your team the longer the fight goes. And that would kind of be the way, like in my mind, like the fight would eventually end because you just can't survive the stacks of poison anymore or something, right? Like puts on a certain amount of stacks, you can't can't cleanse them all. So it'd be like a really cool team to have, like this big cleansing type team. Anyways, I think it'd be a really cool concept as some kind of like individual boss added to the game. And last up, can't leave him off the list, Saruman, right? Like he is absolutely the best character as like the rivalry to Gandalf, right? So we got Gandalf in this current raid. I think it kind of hits me on both spots. So he'd be a cool character add into the game as people are getting closer and closer approaching Gandalf on their accounts. So a lot of people are starting to see Gandalf or on like higher end teams, but I would say the vast majority of players probably don't quite have Gandalf yet. I mean, I'm not even really close to Gandalf at this point. I think I'm at like 70 or 80 shards. You need what, 300 to even unlock him, 310. So I'm still a couple of months away, probably at least 2 months, 3 months away. So when I get him, and probably a lot of other people start getting him as we get into like spring, maybe even early summer, as a lot more people start to see him on their accounts, he would be a really cool legendary, possibly, right? As like maybe the legendary for the dark side, so, or the shadow side, right? Because like we still haven't seen one yet. So I think he would be a really cool concept, but I also think he'd be really cool if they decide to add another raid at some point in the summer, because we got our first raid, I want to say it was July was the first chapter of the first raid. So we got like July, August, September, October, I think like once a month it was released. So they do a similar design, like 4 chapter sort of concept, and release it on a monthly cadence. I think he'd be also a really cool character to release in the raid as like the raid legendary, right? Like the one you get for doing it and then getting shards towards a legendary version of a character. And like we got Gandalf in the Mines of Moria, and then you get Saruman and whatever the next raid is. Like that'd be really cool too, but it just depends on when that raid comes out, because I think with Gandalf in the game and him kind of being like on a lot of people's wish list of unlocking sooner than later, you get him and then Saruman needs to be somewhere where it's not like not on everyone's mind anymore. Like Gandalf is just on everybody's account, like he's just sort of there, they're waiting for the next big like it'd be cool to get him into the game while Gandalf is kind of like the hot thing, right? Like everyone's still working towards him. So I think Saruman would be an awesome addition, either as a legendary or as a raid unlock, depending on your scores, right? So those are the 10 characters that I had on my list. There's obviously a ton of other ones that we could certainly consider, but these are the 10 that kind of came to mind. And I think they'd be really cool to add to the game, and I think they're all possibilities that we'll probably see it in the game at some point, and the sooner the better, because they're all notable characters. So let me know what you guys think. Let me know if there's any characters I left off that you would love to see in the game added, and post in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.